Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
This morning we're continuing in the book of Numbers. We're continuing, which brings us to the story of Korach, the rebellion of Korach against Aaron's and Moses' authority vis-a-vis the sancta, vis-a-vis the cult, and Datan and Aviram, their rebellion against Moshe and his authority, accusing him of we're not sure what, but Moshe says, I didn't take anything from these people. So it seems that Moshe is interpreting their part of their complaint to be about, what do you call it when you're in charge and you take money? Embezzlement, that Moshe is embezzling. These two stories, scholars seem to agree that one source is the priestly source. That's the thing we get with the rebellion against Moshe, but mostly against Aharon. And like, aren't all the people holy? How come y'all think you're so holy? Korach, I'm going to show you a chart. Korach has a claim that he's not wrong to at least push this argument. All the commentators agree he's wrong about how he does it. So that's one story. That's the peace story. That's the priestly narrative. The other story is the rebellion against Moshe's authority by Datan and Aviram. That is understood to be a J story. So that is a story from the south. That is not the northerners, the Israelite tradition. That is a Judean story. So I'm going to stop so we can say a bracha. I just wanted to tee us up because we're not going to read the rebellion story. So I just wanted to tee us up. I'll review a little bit more, but we're going to read the end of the stories that have been put into one narrative. They've been woven together and you can pretty well see the seams. And we're going to look at the end of the narrative and some commentary about that. Okay. Let's say a bracha for our Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, Spirit of the universe, who makes us holy with your mitzvot, calling us to engage with words of Torah. So I'm going to show you a chart. This is the this is the tribe of Levi. And you don't have to go all the way to the bottom even, because if you look closely, remember this is all made up in terms of all descending from one of the brothers, one of the 12 tribes, one of the 12 brothers. But so here's some groups that probably, formed an early confederation calling themselves Levi. But it gets written back onto Levi being the eponymous ancestor, brother to all of these clans. Okay. So in their imagination, in these clans, Merari, Kohat, Gershon, in these clans that we see described in Torah with all of their things that they're supposed to do in the Mishkan, they do porterage, right? These are the ones that they cover and carry all the stuff of the Mishkan and the planks. Sorry, only Aaron and the priests can cover stuff. These folks, Gershon, Kohat, and Merari, they schlep different parts of the Mishkan. So we get these clans named. So in their imagination, in early Israel's imagination, they read themselves back into a common ancestor. Whether that's true or not, we don't need to worry about. But the Torah understands, and for our Korach story, this is the lineage that the Torah undertakes as legit, like as what is, okay? So here's Levi. Who comes from Levi? These clans, Gershon, Kohat, and Merari, of course, they have eponymous ancestors also, right? So there was a guy named Gershon, a guy named Kohat, and a guy named Merari, all sons of Levi. Okay, that's how these clans imagine themselves to be related. So let's pretend for a minute that's true. Levi has 3 sons, Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. They then have sons, right? So we get their sons because it goes through the father. But here we have Levi, and we know something about he takes a woman of the tribe of Levi for wife. Amram takes a daughter of Levi for a wife. Here it's being read as a literal daughter of Levi as a wife. So Amram takes Yocheved, and Amram and Yocheved, direct descendants from Levi, have Moses, Miriam, and Aaron. Females are in a different color because the line of succession goes through the male. Okay. So if you look at the chart, Ishar is Amram's brother. Korach is the son of Ishar. So what Korach is arguing is, my father was the same status as Amram. My father was a grandchild of Levi, a grandson of Levi. So was Amram. How come power passes to Moses and Aaron from Amram when Korach is saying, my father was also a grandson of Levi? From the same son. They are first cousins, Moses and Korach. Do you see? So both Amram and Yitzhar are sons of the middle son, Kahat. So many people say Korach has a legitimate argument. We both descend from Kahat. Our grandfather, Kahat, we have in common. So why, Moses and Aaron, do y'all get to be head of everything, of the sancta, of the cult, when I have the same yichus? I have the same ancestry as you. Okay? So that just visually gives you, and it's very hard for me to do these things without a visual. First cousins, grandfather, blah, blah, that's really hard for me. So this makes it a little clearer that Korach's status is the same as Moshe and Aaron, given their ancestry, unless you want to argue Amram was the firstborn. That's a possible argument, that Amram was the firstborn, but that's not really the argument Torah makes, is it? What's the argument Torah makes? Why are Moshe and Aaron given their positions? Is it because Amram is the firstborn? No. Why? Because God said so. Okay? So Torah does not rely on an argument that they are the descendants of the firstborn son of Kohat. Korach also doesn't seem to buy that as a legitimate argument because he doesn't go there. And Moshe and Aaron don't use it either. Like, well, we're the sons of the firstborn. Everybody gets it. Moshe and Aaron get it, that they are in charge because God said so. Korach is not so sure about that. Okay. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a rebellion of, in this instance, Korach against Moshe and Aaron as head of the cult. Then we've got Datan and Abiram. That's a separate story, a J source, a Judean source, a southern source, about the challenge to Moshe's authority. And Moshe seems to imply that they are implying that he is corrupt. He's power hungry and corrupt in some way. Okay. So we're not going to go through the whole thing. We're going to go to the end of the story. So here we have, and again, these two rebellions have been woven together into one text. Korach and his entire community assembled against them, against Moshe and Aaron, at the entrance to the Ohel Ha'edah, the tent of witness. And the kavod of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was seen by the entire community. And God says to Moshe and Aaron, separate yourselves from the midst of this community that I may finish them off. Like, I'm done. God's done. But instead, Aaron and Moshe fling themselves on their faces, right? And say to God, Elohei haruchot lechol basar. Beautiful term for God. God of the spirits of all flesh. Ha'ish echad yechateh ve'al kol ha'edah tiktzof. If one person sins, are you going to hold the whole edah, right, responsible and be furious with all of them? So again, Moshe and Aaron stand between God and people's punishment. And God speaks to Moshe and says, speak to the community saying, get up and get away from Korach, Datan, and Abiram. Meaning, all right, you're saying only the guilty should be punished? Fine. Then tell people to get away who are not supportive of this mess. Tell them to get away from the houses of Korach, Datan, and Abiram, the tents of these folks. Moshe arose and went to Datan and Abiram, and there went after him the elders of Israel. So a whole delegation goes over to them, and he spoke to the community saying, turn away from the tents of these horrible people. Do not touch anything that is theirs, lest you be swept away in their sin. And they went up from the dwellings of Korach, Datan, and Abiram all around. Datan and Abiram had come out, stationed to the entrance at their tents, their wives, their children, and their little ones. Moshe says, by this shall you know that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh sent me, shlachani la'asot et kol ha'ma'asim ha'ela, to do all these things. and that it's not from libi, my own heart. If these people die, like all people die, right? Then it is not Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh who sent me. But im bri'a yivra Adonai, if a creation God creates, ufatz ta'adama et piha, and the earth opens its mouth, uval'at otam, and swallows them, and everything that is theirs, and they go chayim, they go living, she'ola, down towards Sheol, then y'all will know that these men have turned against Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Now, just as he was finished speaking all these words, what happens? The earth splits, right? And they are swallowed. Vatiftach haaretz et piha, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them and their households and everything that belonged to them and all of their property. So they went down, they and all theirs, alive to Sheol. The earth covered them and they vanished from the midst of the assembly. So what do the people do? The people start screaming, right? Let's get out of here, lest the earth swallow us too. And that doesn't seem to be the right answer. And the fire went out from before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and consumed the 50 and 200 men, those bringing near the incense. So this is the end of the other narrative. This is the end of the other story where Korach challenged. So this is the end of Datan and Aviram. Now we're getting the end of Korach, who challenges their right to the priesthood, their right to lead the cult. And remember, they're told to bring their fire pans. Moshe says, bring your fire pans in the morning, and we'll see who God chooses. They bring their fire pans, the 250 people who are supporting Korach's rebellion, and they are all consumed by fire. Okay? So I have to tell you, like all y'all, I've read this story a lot. I've known this story my whole life. And I've known the end of the story my whole life. And since I've been a rabbi, I've been like dealing with the end of the story that I never really paid much attention to, that we're going to look at now. But now I have to tell you, it's like, it is very interesting that it leaps off the page. God speaks to Moshe saying, tell Eleazar, son of Aharon the priest, that he may set aside the pans from the burned remains and the fire coals scatter, for they have become holy. All right. So what is it saying? This says, the fire pans that the rebels use, the people are burned up. They are incinerated. But the fire pans, the burned up fire pans remain. God says, tell Aaron's son that these fire pans are to be taboo. They are to be set aside. They are kadosh. They are sacred. They are to be, that's what kadosh means, of course, separate, apart. And so are the incense ashes. They are to be scattered because they're holy also. The fire pans of those who sinned at the cost of their lives, make of them beaten plates, overlaid for the altar, for they were brought near before the presence of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and have become holy. So not only preserve them, but they're going to be a covering, beat them into a covering for the altar. So that's what they did. And they beat them as an overlay for the altar so that it should be zikaron, a remembrance for the people of Israel, in order that no person might come near who's not of a descendant of Aaron, to turn smoking incense into smoke before the presence of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and so that he not become like Korach and like his community, as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh spoke through the hand of Moshe to him. All right. Why does that jump out at me? When I was up at my burned out house, that, remember I told you, the Jerry Falwell people, the Samaritan Project, the Christian, very, very, very fundy Christians came to help us. One of the things we found, one of them found, he picked it up like this and showed it to me, was metal that had been burned and had the 10 Commandments on it. And he's like, Rabbi, what is this? And like my blood just ran cold. And I said, that is the charred remains of the cover of my family Bible that was silver and copper. You know, those big ones, the big thick ones that have the jewels on the front, not jewels, the, semi-precious stones on the front, and it's metal and it has hinges. And like a lot of us have them from our grandparents and our parents. I had just shown my first cousin who lives here in LA. I had just shown him this past year the inside of that family Bible where my grandfather, in his beautiful, meticulous hand, had written on a family tree that was printed on the inside of that cover every name of our family. And my sister and I were the last grandchildren, so we're kind of squeezed in at the bottom. And that's what was left, right? The part of the front kind of mangled and with the 10 Commandments still showing, and part of the back. They are, of course, unhinged now. So I was showing my host, Lonnie, who has the eye of an artist, and we were talking about how I might preserve them and hang them in my house. But it took me a while to get there. I was like, is this really what I want hanging on the wall? Is like, this is what's left of my family's material legacy? Like this. And over time, I've come to a place of thinking, yes, as tragic as it is, it's a huge event. And it's going to be a zikaron on the wall that I survived, that we survived this tragic, horrific event, this tragedy, this destruction, and we go on. And that's what it will be for me. Not just a remembrance of the fire and destruction, but that we as a people go on, we as a community go on. I will go on as somebody teaching Torah, and I have lots of children in that sense, not just Ellie. Like, anyway, my legacy is bigger than that fire. All right, so that is the first time I've ever related to beating the fire pans that were burned into a zikaron over the altar that says, we'll get past this. Like, now God's instinct makes sense to me in a way it never has. I mean, I got it rationally. Okay, yeah, let it be a symbol, so don't screw up like they did. But I think it's much deeper. Now, it's much deeper for me that God's instinct is, I'm going to get this people through this. Because Moshe and Aaron insist on it. God was ready to start over here again. But they intercede again. And God says, okay, I'm going to forgive this people. They're making me nuts, but I'm going to forgive them. And we're going to get through this. And it does mean pain and destruction and terrible things. And that's the cost sometimes. I mean, if you look around the world, that's the cost of war, right? It's just horrible destruction. And okay, so I don't want to beat it to death. So now I want you to hold that image, those fire pans, my family Bible burned into two pieces. Hold that image with the end of the other story. Here's the end of the other story. So we got the fire pans, and I told you that Lonnie's instinct with the Bible was the same as God's with the fire pans. The remnants of destruction as a zikaron, as a reminder, as a remembrance. But look at this one. Look at the end of this story, the second narrative. Again, they get in between God and the people. God is ready to wipe them out. There's a plague. All right. And they effectively turn back the plague, Moshe and Aaron, by doing what, by the way? By burning incense. By burning incense, which also never stuck out to me before, right? So they went and did exactly the thing that the illegitimate rebels did, but now it's legitimate, and so it works, all right? So kind of the irony there, or maybe fitting, right? That, that Moshe and Aaron take in a fire pan, put incense in it, and do exactly, they cure what brought on destruction when Korach and his people did it, okay? And then let's go, this is very interesting. So God speaks to Moshe and says, speak to the people of Israel, take from them a staff, a mateh, a staff each per household from all the leaders, right? So each leader of each tribe, what's the word for tribe? Mateh. Each one of them is to bring what? A mateh, a staff. So the staff is standing in Hebrew, quite literally, for the tribe. 12 staffs, each person, his name you are to write on the staff. So every tribe has their leader bring forward a staff, and the person's name, the leader's name, is put on the staff. It might be the tribe's name, we're not sure. And the name of Aharon, you are to write upon the staff of Levi. So it seems to be the person bringing it forward's name. Aharon's the head, in this case, of the tribe of Levi. What are they supposed to do with them? Put them in the tent of appointment before the testimony, where I appoint meeting with you. Now it shall be, the person whom I choose that staff will sprout. Thus will I still from upon me the grumblings of the people Israel, that they set grumbling against you both. God wishes. Moshe spoke to the people Israel, and they gave him, all the leaders, a staff per each one, 12 staffs with the staff of Aaron in the midst of their staffs. Moshe laid out the staffs before the presence of God in the tent of testimony. And it was on the morrow when Moshe entered the tent of testimony, here it had sprouted, the staff of Aaron of the house of Levi. It had put forth a sprouting flower. It had blossomed a blossom, and it had ripened almonds! Exclamation point. All right, so what are we told? It's put in where the people cannot see it. Interesting. Why? Okay, we're going to go there. Why? Why isn't it put outside where everybody can see? It's inside where only the priest can go. By Yotzei Ferach. So the first thing that happens is that it brings forth buds. So think about a fruit tree, an almond tree. What's the first thing that happens? That little bud. Vayatzei tzitz. So and then the bud blossoms into a tzitz. So here's the verb for it, and here's the noun. It blossoms into a blossom. Okay? Vayigmol shkedim. And there grew shkedim, almonds. So the miracle is that there's bud, blossom, and almond all at the same time. That doesn't usually happen. Usually you have the bud, the blossom falls, the fruit develops. So part of the miracle is that you've got the bud, the blossom, and the fruit all happening at the same time. Remember that in Israel, you botanists, remember the almond tree is the first to flower in Israel in the spring. Tu B'Shvat, we celebrate the sap being pulled into the trunk of the almond tree. We're not celebrating the flowering at Tu B'Shvat. We're celebrating the sap being pulled up into the tree. We won't see the blossoms till later, till spring. So it's no accident, I don't think, that it's the almond tree. So Moshe brought out the staffs from before the presence of God to all the people. They saw them. Each one took their staff because it, of course, had their name on it. And God says to Moshe, return the staff of Aaron before the testimony to be safeguarded as what? Take the mateh, return it back into the Holy of Holies, essentially, so that it can be an ot. It can be a sign for whom, right? So everybody who had the chutzpah to rebel, that this will be over, that this will stop, and that they shouldn't die. God doesn't want them to die. Moshe did it, did what God commanded. What happens with the Israelites? Something new and different. They start complaining and freaking out and screaming, oh my God, we're going to die. We're all going to die. Will there be an end to our perishing? All right. So they complain after Korach and his folks get swallowed up. Like they're like, oh, run for your lives. We're going to die too. They do the same thing after the flowering of the staff. But it seems that there's a different message here. And it has to do, as Yitz Greenberg keeps telling us, and those of you who are looking at his new book, his final probably work, he should live to 120 and write several more. But this is how he understands his lifetime of teaching, is that Judaism is a religion of life. So after this whole business of a zikaron being about the death and the destruction by fire, and the fire pans are to be beaten into this covering for the altar, we now get this other sign. And this sign is about being fruitful and a sign of life. And it seems that this is how the editor who put these two stories together wants to end. Wants to end on this note of God as a God of life, and wants this to be about how we can flower and blossom and grow. Of course, I'm going to say as a people, and not die. That's not the goal. It happens. We're humans and we get into stuff that we shouldn't, and people die. Look at the news. Turn on the news. We get that. We're not denying that reality, and that this is a message about life and about flourishing and how to do that. And it seems we need an ot, right? We need a zikaron about the dangers of destruction, and we need an ot, a hopeful sign. Remember, ot is always a good thing. Shabbat is an ot forever about the marriage between God and the people, or the adoption of Israel by God. So ot is always a good thing. So this staff is going to be an ot. But where is the staff? Where's the staff going to be? We just read it. Come on, y'all.
It's in the hands of people.
Where's the staff going to, where was it just put at the end of the story?
Tent of meeting.
It's put in the tent of meeting. Are the people going to see it there?
No.
So how was it an oat? Pam. Pam's like, yeah, good question, Rabbi. Good question. Who's it an oat for? If it's in the tent of meeting and the people can't see it, who's it an oat for?
The priests.
The priests. Okay. And Melinda and Bert both have the same instinct. Anybody have a different instinct?
God.
Who?
God.
God.
Moses. Moses.
Our choices are Moses, the priests, or God. What's going on if it's an oat for God?
So he won't wipe us out again just because of troublesome, quarrelsome people who argue with him all the time, daily.
So maybe, I hear you saying, Susan, if it's an oat for God, what God wants is for them to put a reminder where God is going to show up and speak to Moshe, where God's going to show up, and Aaron can be in the room with God once a year on Yom Kippur, that in that intense intimacy, in that intensely intimate bedroom space where there's the most intimacy between humanity and God, God wants an oat there to remind God that God wants life for this people.
And God names us Israel, struggles with God.
Very nice. And God names Yaakov, our ancestor, the one who wrestles. So maybe God needs an oat, that God needs to remind God's self when God is concentrated in the Holy of Holies. And why does God concentrate in the Holy of Holies? To make contact with humanity. So in that space of intimacy, what we would call, right, the king-size bed in the master suite, God puts an oat, a sign for God's self. Don't smack this people. Yes, they deserve it. Yes, they're going to screw up. Yes, they're going to test your patience. Don't do it. You want life for them. Remember, look at the flowering staff. Beautiful.
Aren't there a number of times when God remembers, as if God had forgotten, and all of a sudden remembers, like the Israelites cry out from Egypt, and all of a sudden God remembers them? I mean, how could God forget? But nevertheless, that there appear to be times when, or Abraham saying to God, hey, wait a minute, you're a just God. How can you do this to Sodom and Gomorrah?
But interestingly, to that point, Bert, Zikaron is used of the fire pans. Oat is used of the staff. So Zikaron is not here in the staff incident, only in the fire pan incident. I want you to think of your commentary taking that into account. And Melinda.
It feels like an echo of the Noah's Ark story and the rainbow. And it's like, okay, God made the rainbow as a sign that God's not going to wipe out all of humanity again. And then God got angry again and needed a different sign to remind God again to not hurt humans who mess up all the time and continue to not do as well as God would like us to. And God's going to keep on making beautiful things on earth as a reminder. Forgive them. They're trying their best, these idiots.
Beautiful, Melinda. The keshet, the rainbow, is also an oat. It is described as an oat. Exactly right. It is an oat. So it seems the keshet was an oat that God shouldn't destroy the world by flood again. Apparently, God also needs an oat not to destroy the people Israel because they refuse to believe, right, and behave and whatever. So we've got a general humanity oat, which is the rainbow, beautiful, and the mateh, the staff, is an oat for God not to clobber this people who deserves it all the time. Bert?
Isn't sometimes an oat both for people and God?
Well, that's always the question.
That it's a sign of the covenant.
Right, so
that's
always the question. Oti le'olam. Shabbat is
right.
Oti le'olam is a sign forever, right? So, but for whom? Good. Okay. So I'm going to blow your minds now. You ready? I'm going to blow your minds. I've heard a hint of this maybe somewhere, but I'm going to blow your minds. Okay. Remember in the book of Kings where there's the religious and Deuteronomy talks about this religious reform. In the book of Kings, we're told Hezekiah takes out of the sanctuary. I blew your minds with that one year. Do you remember when I said they took out a statue, right? They took out the Asherah, they took out this, they took out that, right? And you were like, wait a minute, Rabbi, that was in the temple? And I'm like, yeah, right? Remember? Okay. Just trust me on it, okay? You can go check. Bert can tell you where to find it, and he and Carol know it very well. Okay. So let me show you this commentary. All right. So I did one of my theses. We had to do a thesis every year in rabbinical school. I did my biblical year thesis on a place called Kuntilat Adrud, found in northern Egypt, where there was an inscription that said, "Blessings by Yahweh of hosts." So Adonai Tzvaot, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Tzvaot, and his Asherah. So we see Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and his Asherah in 2 inscriptions at Kuntilat Adrud. So I did my paper on this because I thought that was fascinating, that there's proof of Asherah, right, being worshipped alongside Yahweh. So Asherah, the Canaanite goddess, the Ishtar figure from the ancient Near East, she has many different names. And so that she was worshipped as the consort of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. So look at the image from Kuntilat Adrud. You ready? This is drawn on the wall about the time that we do have early Israel doing its thing. Here's the actual drawing on the wall, the one to the right. Do you see it? Can you see it? Here's what it looks like when it's brought. Here it is in the red. This is how it looks on the wall. Can you see the ibex here? Yeah? You see this big almond-shaped thing with the pockmarks that make almonds? Here's a little one. Here's another one. Yeah? See the curlicues that are the sprouting, right? And here's the buds and the flowers. Yes? And here is definitely something that looks like a staff. Doesn't it? Doesn't this look like what we just described? His staff, Aaron's staff, blossoms. It has blossoms and tendrils and fruit all at the same time. This is the miracle, blah, blah, blah. All right. What do you think? And let's take a look at if you take it off of there, what does it look like? Here it is. Okay. Here it is. Okay. I want you to think about what else that looks like.
Looks like a Sharon's tree pole.
What else? Yeah. Bonagid tree pole. Okay. So, right.
Dare I say a penis and fallopian tubes?
Yeah,
a penis and fallopian tubes. Bert wins the prize, right? You can't, first of all, this looks like a uterus and fallopian tubes, doesn't it? Right? And then this part looks like an erect penis. So you can't miss that, right? That this is fertility, fecundity, right? Which of course comes out of pagan Canaanite tradition and is adopted by folks in the ancient Near East, including Israelites. We know this because in Kings we're told the Asherah is taken out of the sanctuary. What if this is actually an etiological story that describes why there is an Asherah in the sanctuary? That it's not problematic. It's problematic for Hezekiah. It's not problematic for P. If this is a P story, which scholars agree it is, if this is a priestly narrative, this is the priestly, I'm blowing my own mind here. This is a priestly explanation of why it is okay that there is an Asherah in the Holy of Holies, people. It's not problematic. Now, it's a reconstruction of Asherah, but it's a reconstruction so that the Asherah can stay legitimate in the patriarchy that is the theology of a pure Yahwist society, right? Because you have a problem if it's Asherah. If it's a symbol of Asherah, we have a problem. But P does not have a problem because P reconstructs the Asherah to be the flowering of the staff of Aaron caused by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay. That's kind of wild. Yeah, that's kind of wild.
I mean, this is my jam. I wish there was more to say on this in the general Jewish consciousness. So, 2025, this is the now. So,
all right. So one thing, if this
cool,
is,
I know people
if this is the flowering of the staff that is Asherah, the other thing is, think of Aaron's role as priest. What are the priest's roles? What do they do? Essentially, they keep house. They do the feminine service of God. What do? They clean the menorah every day. They light it. they bake the bread, they lay the showbread out, they do the incense stuff, they cook, right? They slaughter the animals, they cut it up, they cook it on the grill, and they serve those meals to the Israelites, because it's supposed to be a meal between God and the people. So the Levites and the priests are essentially doing the housework for God. It kind of makes sense then, doesn't it, that this female imagery is Aharon's staff in the Holy of Holies, because that's what they're about. They are God's wives. They are Asherah, his staff, his symbol of himself, of Aaron's self, and of the priesthood, is actually the feminine counterpart to God, to Yahweh. They are God's consort, doing the wifely feminine work of tending the hearth. They are the feminine divine incarnate. All right. So here's the discussion. This is where I found this at Torah.com, this article by Professor Ra'anan Eichler. And so, it's a stylized tree, and we see the red ink drawing from Kuntilat Adrud. And he goes on to discuss that it might be the parallel to the bronze nechoshet, the bronze snake, remember, that Moshe had that cured the people of plague. Aaron has the Asherah, and Moshe has the nechoshet, the snake. Do you remember who the snake represents in the ancient Near East? Who does the snake represent? In ancient Near Eastern cosmology, who's the serpent?
It's Satan, isn't it?
That's in our tradition. In the ancient Near Eastern tradition, the serpent is the creator goddess, the creatrix, which is why she has to be demoted in our Eden story. She has to be subservient to Adam and to Yahweh, right? So if the Asherah is Aaron's representation of the feminine divine, this author is suggesting Moshe has one too. Moshe has the nechoshet, the serpent that cures people of illness. So both healing and hearth tending, these feminine professions, the work of the feminine to sustain the people, both male leaders have a feminine representation of God as their emblem, as they are the closest to Yahweh. Okay, I don't know about y'all, but I love this. I'm so excited. Okay. I'll let you all think what you want about that. So Chazan Jessica Kate Meyer says, the word for tribe and staff are the same, right? Mateh means both tribe and staff. From one giant piece of wood, Moses carves out the 12 staves. This is a midrash for the 12 tribes. They come from a single source, like the tribe themselves, meaning from Yaakov. Only now the tribes have fragmented, fighting each other for dominance. God calls a trial to clarify once and for all which tribe is divinely ordained to lead. They each put their name on the thing. In the darkness of night, cocooned within the Holy of Holies, a transformation takes place, a miracle, right? No sooner do the flowers appear than the fruit of the almond ripens alongside it, all in darkness. A seemingly dead branch, uprooted and dried, sprouts colorful blossoms, ripe almonds. They say the staff wasn't even made from the wood of an almond tree. So our 19th century commentator, the Malbim, it's awakened from this dormant place, filled with divine spirit, right, and puts forth, so will this tribe, Levi. But let's go to, I love this. Okay. How is it that from nowhere, in the darkness of night, life and beauty sprout victorious? So what is the meaning of the fact that it's in a place nobody can see, right? Because only the high priest can go in there and Moshe. No one can see it, and it's in the dark, in God's bedroom. What does that mean according to Kabbalah, according to the spiritual tradition, the mystical tradition? It conjures Psalm 121, says our commentator, says the Kabbalah. The psalmist says, Me'ayin yavo Ezri. You all know this, right? From where does my help come from? Right? I lift up my eyes to the hills. Me'ayin yavo Ezri. Usually it's translated from where my help comes. That is probably an accurate translation. But there's also the part that says, Me'ayin yavo Ezri, Ezri me'im Adonai. My help is from God. So it could be a question. Me'ayin yavo Ezri, where does my help come from? Me'ayin, from where? But what does ayin actually mean in in rabbinic language and medieval Hebrew. What does ayin mean? Nothing. Nothingness. Capital N. Nothing. God as nothing. God as the great before anything. So what is this commentary saying? Me'ayin actually means from nothing. God created yesh me'ayin. We know this. God creates out of nothing. Something from nothing. My ozer, my help, emerges out of nothing. Sometimes help and future and rehabilitation and beauty sprout from seemingly nothing and nowhere, like an almond blossom on lifeless wood. Or life and a community out of wreckage and debris and ruin. It's emptiness. Ayin is emptiness. But in our tradition, she's saying, it's thick with movement and meaning. Nothing is the primordial source of all life. It's what we sense but cannot see. Anything beyond our comprehension, concealed or unknown, is called ayin. God is called ayin. Our soul is called ayin. So everything, capital E, emerges out of nothing, capital N. Yesh comes out of ayin. That is why the staff is placed in the Kodesh Kedoshim, because that is the space of nothing, of the eminence of the divine into the world. If the Mishkan, remember, is supposed to represent creation, that is the moment of ain, of ayin, of nothing. And the staff represents that is where God comes from. That's where our help comes from. Not the God who redeemed us from Egypt, but the psalmist says, from the one who made heaven and earth. Ex nihilo, out of nothingness. The one who built a world in a black hole. This is the one who must help us. The only one who can teach us to create something out of nothing, to awaken our inanimate places, to grow flowers from our stabs, meaning our dead places, and to discover faith and life and beauty where we least expected. All right, Judith, you wanted to say something?
Yes, this reminds me so much of the Christian story. I think it's where they got it. It's the virgin birth, building a life out of nothing. I mean, no conception, and the Madonna idea of having a mother God to coordinate with the Father God. It seems to be a human trait to want a mother and a Father God in most of the religious world.
Yes, so
even though ours is certainly a...
That is not surprising.
Right.
What is exciting to me about this is that it's right there in our tradition, in this story.
Yes.
And if it's in this story, it might be written as an etiology for why there's an Asherah in the sanctuary.
Exactly. And why there's a Virgin Mary in Christianity.
But we know that.
I guess a Phoenix God too.
But that instinct is very clear. That instinct has always been clear.
Yes.
He was up before. That instinct is clear within Catholicism. That instinct is very clear from the time of pagan tradition in all of these places that Catholicism, conquers as an imperial religion. They're going to reconstruct the feminine in the religions that they conquer and convert forcibly. Right. They give them the feminine through the Virgin Mary. We know this. People deny it's in our tradition. That's what I'm saying. Everybody knows
but it is.
The Virgin Mary is the divine feminine, and that is what appeases folks who need that, right? Like, we get that. But people want to say, but we don't have that. The Catholics do, and Christians of different denominations do. We don't. And what I'm saying is, here is commentary that suggests, oh yeah, we do. And not just the story of the Mishkan, but we know from Kings that there was an Asherah in the sanctuary. What if all along there was an Asherah in the sanctuary, right? I know we know Ahab set up an Asherah, and he gets in trouble for that. But according to this, the priestly tradition has no problem with an Asherah. They revalued it. They reconstructed it to not mean the goddess, the presence of the goddess, but to be Yahweh bringing forth life from something dead.
Right.
Because they didn't want to let the Asherah go. I just love that. Okay, Rachel?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to draw attention to a sort of nuance about that. more the role of intercessor that comes with those goddesses, because and it's in the word helper. Every time we talk about Moses and Aaron, and the way that they intercede, there's the word that comes to mind for me is intercessor, because my undergrad and grad thesis was the Virgin Mary as patron saint of Constantinople. So, because why not? And so she's very much an Eastern Orthodoxy intercessor. And that is a very particular role, and there are layers there in terms of, that can only be the case because of a particular way that you view her role as mother. But that's really the part that I think is so fascinating. There's what you've brought today is showing us how, in so many ways, this need for an intercessor, someone to intercede between the people and God, is built into every single layer of our text, because otherwise the just part of God, the punishing part of God, the angry part, that without it there will only be this one side, and there has to be an intercessor. And then the other thing that's just fascinating. That really did. Then I was thinking about the when you brought the cave drawing, I wanted to know also what the actual images of Ishtar look like. And so I put a link in the chat, and I don't know how common or widespread this is, but it did seem like several of them are shaped in such a way that there's almost like a cone shape to the top of her head, and the body has a kind of shape that's very much like the way the staff was drawn. And then the arms go out, and then sometimes there are wings. It depends. But if you click on the link, you will see one of them. It's very much like this. I mean, it's the same exact shape as the sprouting staff. So if someone else wants to go back to grad school, there's another thesis for somebody. But because I've already got like 10 that I want to do when I'm.
All right. So what's your thesis? What's the thesis?
The thesis is that is another way in which that staff that's an Ishtar there. That's an Ishtar. It has been brought in. It's been completely co-opted, and that in every single way, Aaron, sometimes it's Moses, depending on who's doing the writing, and sometimes it's Aaron, but that's the role of intercessor.
Yes. And
the housekeeping tasks, all of that is just another aspect of the feminine role, but that's very much the feminine role of much of the time of a goddess in religion.
And probably we see remnants of the goddess as intercessor in the stories of Sarah and Rebecca. Mm-hmm. Remember, Sarah and Rebecca both intervene to decide who's going to be the heir.
Yeah.
And they both overturn the patriarch.
Right.
And tradition that says the firstborn son. They both overturn that, and they both intercede to ensure succession goes to who they choose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yes. So definitely goddess as intercessor. What that changes after the fall of biblical Israel. That falls. The only intercessor we have, interestingly, after the fall of the priesthood and the temple, biblical cult, Israelite religion, the only intercessor we have is who? You said it earlier, Bert. Satan.
Oh, yeah.
Satan is the only one who intercedes between the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Blessed One, and the people, and intercedes to say, wait, you are too generous to these people. Have they not screwed up in X and Y way? And if you are the God of justice, you have to be held to your own stated standard and punish them. That is the role of Satan in the Talmud. In all of the Gemara, the role of Satan in early rabbinic writing is the prosecutor. Satan is not evil. That's a Christian interpretation. Satan, in our tradition, is the prosecutorial angel who comes before God to hold God to God's own stated standards. Very interesting. I never thought about that before. That is the only intercessor we have left in rabbinic Judaism. For each of us, forgiveness not being punished for what we deserve. It takes prayer. It takes tshuva, repentance, and a commitment to not doing it again, right? So very, very interesting. So and one of the commentaries, we didn't read it. You can access it when Bert so generously from Paris posts the podcast. One of our commentators says, when Jews left all the places they left, when refugees flee, when I fled my house, what did I take? I took only that which was precious. After the fire, where God has this massive sense of destruction and the people have suffered massive destruction because of fire, what does God want in God's bedroom? The Mishkan is God's bedroom. The Kodesh Kodoshim is, the actual boudoir. What does God put in there? The staff, the manna. God puts in there signs of life. So when God, after the fire, has only a few things to put in the bedroom, God puts manna and God puts this staff, both signs of life for the people, of growth, of coming to fruition. And that's what God wants decorating the bedroom that God shares with humanity. The place of intimate meeting are signs of God as life giver. It's like God wants on the walls things that will remind God as God comes into the bedroom, be gentle with them, grant them life, help them grow, teach them ways that they can be fruitful and productive and can be attached to life-giving ways. All of her paths are peace, right? Like that teach them. Don't forget. When you come to talk to them, when you come to be with them, don't forget God. God says to God's self by looking around at the decorations in the room, don't forget, these are your treasures. This is what's special to you. This is what you took in the duffel bag when you ran from the fire. This is what you took, these things that remind you love this people. You love humanity. And when you speak with them, when you commune with them, when you're intimate with them, grant them ways that they can lean into life and a blossoming that in some ways is only possible after we've suffered loss and grief and destruction. So may it be. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.